Hello, 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 and welcome back to Masquerade Monday. Thanks to a request made by a subscriber, I'm going to be talking about the Bloodlines 2 gameplay trailer that was released during E3 in June. Since a lot of you have subscribed to me for my scripted lore videos, you probably don't know much about me. Hi, I'm Huddy. In any game that I'm really excited about playing, I usually try to stay away from any spoilers because I really want to delve into a game as blind as possible. By the way, yes, I will be playing and/or streaming Bloodlines 2 when it's released. So although I've watched the trailer and seen the clan reveals and begrudgingly gotten some spoilers from articles that have strayed in front of my eyeballs, I really don't know much about the game we are all waiting for. But I am here to please. I am grateful to each and every person who clicks that subscribe button, leaves me a like and/or a comment, or is even just a silent watcher. So having said all of that, here is my personal analysis of the E3 extended trailer. If you want to see it for yourself, if you haven't already, before going through this with me, I'll leave a link to the trailer in the description. And just forewarning, this is not going to be a super scripted video. It's actually not scripted at all, so it's just going to be me looking at the screen at what I see and expounding on it if I can. Also, let me just say, I have gotten a new puppy. He might be making noises in the background, chewing on stuff, scratching things. Don't mind that. He's a good boy. So having said all of that, here's my personal analysis of the E3 extended trailer. Okay, so the trailer starts off with a voice telling, I assume, the player character that they're dead.
Guess I have to be the one to tell you. You're dead.
And we know from the developer videos and articles that our player character will be a Thin Blood because of a mass embrace that will occur in the beginning of the game. And speaking of mass embrace, in the next scene we see two vampires crash down on some unsuspecting Seattleites, and I believe this is how the mass embrace will happen in-game. Personally, I think the Sabbat will descend on Seattle in order to destabilize the Camarilla presence in the city, embracing multiple humans in a single night with no way of knowing who the player character's sire really is. It's also important to note here that everything that we're seeing is pre-alpha gameplay, and it's very obvious even from the first viewing that there are a lot of little glitches, strange facial movements, and lagging audio sync that will hopefully be fixed before its release date in March 2020. So I'm not going to be going into all that. We also see here that a stake is being removed from the player character. Anyone who has played Bloodlines 1 probably remembers that the player character gets staked right in the opening cutscene before being brought before LaCroix's court. Staking a vampire paralyzes them, so it makes me wonder who stakes us after our embrace, and if I had to guess, it would probably be a vampire sent by the Camarilla in some sort of an attempt to do some sort of damage control. The next few shots are an overview of some city locations and a voice, which sounds to me kind of like a Nosferatu would sound.
The city. We're all fighting over scraps here.
Telling the player character that we're all fighting for scraps here in Seattle. Also, let me just say, I'm so super excited that the game is in Seattle. Washington is one of the few states I never visited, and I have a feeling Hardsuit Labs will do the setting justice since they are based in Seattle. The next shot we see is who I think is the same woman from the reveal trailer, who kind of looks like Christina Hendricks, who I would have to guess is a Toreador, followed by a voice saying Seattle is firmly under my control.
Whatever you do in my city, I will hear about it. Seattle is firmly under my control.
Now, unfortunately, I did get a spoiler. I can't remember where I got it, but I remember seeing that the Seattle Prince of the Camarilla will be named, or will be a man named Cross, and that's an obvious head nod to LaCroix, which is Cross in French, from Bloodlines 1. And I'm guessing that the voice who's saying that Seattle is firmly under my control is his voice. Another shot is of a man holding a machete, and I think he is another Toreador, based on the rose on his lapel, but I should also say that he appears to be the same vampire from the cover art of the game, and he looks really similar to the vampire featured in the Malkavian clan reveal video. If you haven't seen that video, I'll just leave a link to the playlist on Paradox Interactive's YouTube channel so you can watch all the clan reveals. I don't know if any of those characters featured in the reveal trailer are going to be in the game, or if they were just sort of one-offs, or whatever you want to call it, but either way, I really hope he's a romance option. We get a quick shot of the player character feeding on, I assume, a homeless person. And although I will miss the circling blackness feeding style thing of the first game, I am okay with this. Okay, so then we get a couple of shots of humans wandering around, and we can see their circulatory system, like X-ray vision, but for blood. So it's still rather up in the air how much the game will be taking from version 5 of Vampire the Masquerade, but this is definitely directly from the role-playing tabletop book. Blood resonance is a system that they introduced in the 5th edition, and it's used to increase disciplines or give a person different disciplines, things like that. And it's used to increase disciplines, and in the case of Thin Bloods, like alchemic recipes and powers, things like that. So whatever resonance a mortal has is set by their emotional state, and resonance is categorized into 5 types. There's animal, which would come from like rats or some other animal, and that would help with disciplines, believe it or not, like animalism. There's the choleric resonance, which would come from a person who is like mean or violent or vicious, and that would help with more offensive disciplines, fighting, things like that. Melancholy, which would obviously come from a person who is sad or depressed, and that would help with disciplines like obfuscate, passive disciplines, or disciplines that allow you to sneak, not be seen. Phlegmatic, which would be gained from a human who was like really unemotional and calm, a lone wolf, you know, stoic, and that would help with disciplines like auspex and dominate. And then the last one is sanguine, which would come from like a really highly sexual person or someone who's manic or just like super high on life, and that would help with disciplines like blood, sorcery, and presence. And I also know that the type of buffs that we'll get from feeding on the mortals, and again from another developer interview, it'll also affect dialogue choices, you know, charismatic choices or aggressive choices, things like that. And we also know that resonance is going, or at least how they referred to it in, I think right after the reveal trailer in one of the developer interviews, is that resonance is going to be like vampire flavors and will offer temporary buffs or even permanent buffs if the player character continuously feeds on the same resonance frequently enough.
So we have a brand new mechanic in this game called resonance. So when you feed on blood, you gain blood naturally, but the blood also carries with it a kind of emotional flavor to it that can help enhance your abilities. So if you were to feed on a lot of the emotion rage, for instance, it would help your combat abilities. And if you feed on a lot of desire emotions, it would help your social abilities. So it makes feeding a lot more deliberate and can really enhance your character and your gameplay.
Which I find that super cool. I'm really looking forward to messing around with this mechanic. The next shot we see a man leading us into a crypt of some kind, or maybe just like a super fancy parlor or mausoleum. My guess is he's a Tremere or a Ventru just from the opulent surroundings. We also get a nice shot of what I assume to be a Bruja punching so hard player character goes flying down a hall. We also get some dialogue from the curly-haired fellow from the reveal trailer, the guy who sits down next to the player character and just tears into a blood pack, telling us not to break the masquerade.
We have one rule. You don't break the masquerade.
From what I know, he's going to be our neighbor, or at least one of our first contacts after the mass embrace, kind of like a smiling Jack figure, tutorial type of a thing, and that he remains inside as much as possible, fearful of the jihad, or vampire politics, or just fearful in general, I'm not really sure. And of course, obviously, I knew the masquerade would be in the game. It's called Vampire the Masquerade, after all, and I'm really excited to see if there's any changes in mechanics from the original game. There's this really strange scene here with the player character using a discipline that makes all these vampires fly up into the air, and they all seem to be the same person, or they're all at least dressed the same, and I don't know what this is, but like I really want to know what this is. So if you know, or if you have a guess, tell me in the comments. We then get a few more shots of examples of the disciplines we can attain, even if it's just temporary, and they all seem to be in first person, which makes me a little worried. I play in first person all the time, like playing Fallout and Skyrim, things like that, but I love being able to zoom out and run around in third person, especially if it's a custom design character with custom or like different outfits, changing the hair, things like that. And I really hope that was just a choice they made for the trailer and that we will get first and third person in the final game. The next shot is the player character walking through an apartment when they get a text message from someone named Penny, which by the way, I love the idea of, you know, having smartphones at the game. And the text message says, "Hey boss, got a message from the factions, they want to chat, they're at the bar, the coffee shop, the club, and the parking garage." And this got me super excited. And if you didn't know, I made lore videos about about all the major factions in Vampire the Masquerade, which you can watch here, and being able to choose a faction to side with is on the top of my list of things I want to be in this game. So obviously we have the Anarchs, the Camarilla, the Sabbat. The fourth faction is unknown. It could be a more obscure faction like the Tal Mehra, or it could be an independent faction. But if I had to guess, it would probably be a faction of Thin Bloods. Let me know in the comments what faction you guys think it might be. So the next scene is the player character talking to a woman who, based on her occult jewelry choices, is most likely a Tremere, who sends us looking for another Thin Blood named Slug, who has information that we need to extract by whatever means necessary, and then tells us to check in with the Nosferatu, you know, the masters of information. I have a very special place in my heart for a Nosferatu, and to be perfectly honest, if we can diablerize a sire, I'm going Nosferatu first, because when I played Bloodlines 1, I loved Fugly. Fugly was, I was so upset when I did the little quiz thing in the beginning that chooses your clan or your bloodline. I was so bummed I got Nosferatu, but I just immediately I fell in love with Fugly, and I wouldn't have had a different kind of first experience with Bloodlines. We also get to see the inside of, I assume, or an Elysium club called Atrium, and later on when we run into the Nosferatu, he wants us to bring him Slug, and I'm not sure if that's opposed to bringing the information to the Tremere we saw earlier. The way the dialogue went, it sounded like the Tremere woman wanted information from Slug and for us to bring it to her, to beat it out of him or what have you. And the way that the Nosferatu was talking, who I don't know his name, it sounds like that instead he wants us to bring him Slug and he'll give us whatever reward the Tremere woman promised. I'm not really sure if that's what's going on there, but was my interpretation of that. And to be honest, decisions in games and having them affect the outcome is like the outcome of the ending and different things that happen in the game. I live for it, so I'm here for this. Then finally, we get an image of Slug, who we also saw him in the reveal trailer, and although he's a Thin Blood, he looks quite deformed and more like a Nosferatu than a Thin Blood. But I do know that Thin Bloods can sometimes take on characteristics and or weaknesses of their sires, so it could have been a Nosferatu Sabbat who sired him during the mass embrace. The player character pursues him, and we get to see some of the weapons that will be available for our arsenal, like a shotgun, a baseball bat, a machete, our own fists, and we get to see some melee action against some thugs in our way. We also get to see some dialogue and choice options, very similar to Bloodlines 1, where based on our character traits or resonance buffs, we will have some coercion options, something more diplomatic, maybe even flirtatious somewhere down the road. I don't know, but I'm all for it. I love it. To end the trailer, we get a few more shots of the player character's disciplines in action, followed by us getting staked by, I imagine, the guy who pulled it out of us at the beginning of the trailer. So like a little circling back to the start action going on there. And yeah, that's the end of the trailer. I did leave out a few, just like exterior shots or very quick shots that I really don't have any commentary on, and I don't really know what's going on there. It's not enough information. But honestly, I can't find a whole lot wrong with what I'm seeing so far, and we don't have all the details about the story. I'm not going to worry about first person, third person animation glitches, anything like that, until we have a trailer with actual gameplay or a demo or what have you. The final thing I do want to touch on is the clan choice. There was a developer interview, obviously, like I said before, I can't remember which one, but I'm sure a quick Google search would find you an article, where they said that we would get to choose our clan after X amount of hours in the game, and I don't remember the exact number. Like I said, I tried to stay spoiler free as much as possible, so I actively try to avoid spoilers if I can. Now, the only way I can see this happening is that we, the player character, would have to find a vampire and diablerize him. It's not a super great plan when it's highly frowned on by the Camarilla, who I assume is in power in Seattle. Therefore, I can only guess that this prince will issue some sort of blood hunt at some point against those who performed the mass embrace, and we will get to diablerize our sire or whichever vampire we choose in that way. And to expound on that point, I don't know if the Camarilla will turn a blind eye to diablerie during a blood hunt. But to be honest, I don't know any other way we could join a clan proper without resorting to diablerie. But I imagine maybe if you don't want to, you can remain a Thin Blood and join the Thin Blood faction and just do a Thin Blood playthrough. I really don't know. But if you guys have any guesses or clues, or maybe you just know more about the story than me because you're not afraid of spoilers, please leave it in the comments. And that's my whole analysis. This is my first time making something like this. It's very more informal than something I would normally normally do. And if you lasted this long, I thank you. I appreciate you listening to me ramble and prattle on. So yeah, this is where I'm going to leave you guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one, next Masquerade Monday. Lore video coming out about the Bruja. Bye bye!